Hi there, this is Jim.
And Ralph,
Welcome to Psych Takeaway. Ralph, what are we talking about today?
we're talking about decision making and personality. And decision making and personality is interesting, Jim, because we often think about the difficulties that we personally have in decision making, but we don't think necessarily that has anything to do with our personality. We think it has to do with our problems.
Correct. And we've been looking for the last 2 weeks at personality, and it dawned on both of us that, the problems are there, but the way we approach them from an emotional intelligence or a personality point of view will have some impact on how well we make these decisions. Now, you and I have talked, Ralph. I'm writing a book now with Jerry Fuller on decision making, and it's really interesting. It goes back, the topic of decision making goes back a long way. Epictetus said a lot about it, and so did Seneca, and St. Ignatius of Loyola wrote a book on decision making. So, it's hot in the 2024s, but it's been around for quite a while. But few people have really looked at the role of personality on decision making.
Yeah, and for example, we talk about the big five, the five characteristics of personality, and one of them is openness to experience. And individuals high in openness are often more creative. They're more willing to consider novel options. They're more comfortable with uncertainty. And so they may take risks in decision making. And that can lead to innovative solutions, but it can also lead to abject
Disaster.
failures.
Yeah. Yeah. The pilot of the airplane that's just lost an engine, I think we would want conscientiousness to be the key mark
To be
there.
the lead hand
Yeah,
there.
right.
Yeah.
So,
And
we have talked before about the big five: extroversion, openness, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and neuroticism. And we've used the acronym OCEANS, and OCEANS cover ocean. It covers all of those. But when we think about decision making, there are big five there too: spontaneous, avoidant, dependent, intuitive, and rational. And that's where we'd probably want our air pilot to be, right?
right.
Rational.
And the example that when we were talking earlier, I gave was the example of a physician. We want our physician to make rational decisions. So he says, you have suffered with camel disease. We want to know why he says that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Other than I'm the doctor and you're the patient, right?
right?
Yeah. So let's look at the big five, and then we'll look at the MMPI and see how various factors might affect decision making. Okay, so somebody's an extrovert, Ralph. What are the characteristics there of an extrovert?
Well, yeah, an extrovert is, they tend to be spontaneous. They tend to like working with groups of people. They often are maybe the life of the party, you could say, as opposed to the introvert who often, you find an introvert at the party. Where are they? They're sitting in a couple of chairs with another person one on one talking.
Mm-hmm. So the extrovert could be a leader and could, in some way, lead people to make his or her decision, which may or may not be a good decision, right?
Right.
Okay. So the introvert might have the solution to the problem. I can think of the movie Apollo 13, where I think it was Apollo 13, where the guys are going to be stuck in space, And everybody was talking, and finally, this one guy who hadn't said anything in the movie up to this point said, "No, this is all wrong. We got to do this." And he finally made uh,
The rate.
the decision to be able
Yeah.
to. Yeah. They said, "No, we got to do it this way." He said, "No, the only way you can do it is like this, and here are the three reasons."
Yeah.
And he was able to carry the day, which got the astronauts back.
Yeah. And for example, conscientiousness, a person who is conscientious might sit down and they have a decision to make, and they sit down and say, okay, I am going to purchase a new refrigerator.
Okay.
Now, here's all the criteria that I want in my refrigerator.
Okay, listing all the criteria, yeah.
Okay, and then here's what I can get for X number of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And so they say, well, what's the trade-off? I can't get a cold water and ice dispenser for under $2,000
You mean in the fridge?
in the fridge.
Yeah, right.
So is that a must-have? Or is it a nice to have?
Okay. It's interesting, Ralph. Sheila and I just bought some new appliances, including a freezer refrigerator. And we couldn't find one without a ice and water dispenser. We didn't want it. So we had to buy it.
Okay.
So sometimes you don't
it's
have options.
It's no longer a luxury in terms of the manufacturer.
Right. It's like having a light on in the inside of your fridge.
Yeah.
I think the light goes off when you close the door, right?
I don't know. I've never seen it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So using the rational decision-making model, you take the fridges that are available, GE, Frigidaire, Westinghouse, etc., and then you'd have your criteria down here. Freezer on the top, freezer on the bottom, side by side, ice maker, etc. And then you'd rank these in terms of what you think you really want. Okay, I really want side by side, I really want ice maker, and I really want it in stainless steel. Okay, now here's what I can afford with GE. Not stainless steel, but it does have the side by side. Does have the ice maker. Carol says you can't get them without ice makers. Okay, and the price, $1,500. Okay, now down here, here's one that's Crosley. They used to make radios, I think, right?
Right.
Yeah, well, they're making appliances now. Okay, no side by side, but they've got a freezer at the top and a fridge down below. No ice maker, but it's $900. So the $900 gets a high rating. Okay, so the no side by side gets a low rating. The no ice maker gets a low rating. But at the end of the day, the price just might carry it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You might end up saying, right at this moment, I can afford $1,000. So as much as I would like the $1,700 fridge, I can't do it.
Right. Well, Ralph, just take out another credit card.
Right.
We should talk about decision making. That's one bad one, right?
One bad one, yeah.
Yeah. So the rational model would be to find your options and apply them. Now, a person who's big on introversion might be able to do this, right? Yeah.
Right.
A person who's big in conscientiousness probably can do this. A person who is an extrovert could probably do it, but the extrovert might want that fridge now. I don't want to go through this whole process. I just want to go down to ABC Warehouse or your big box store and find out what's on the floor and what I like, right?
Right.
And
And then say, okay, if you deliver this to my house tomorrow, can I pay you $100 a month for the next 20 months?
Sure, at 15% interest?
Yeah,
No problem. Okay, on to the next decision. So the the rational, the intuitive, the dependent, the avoidant, the spontaneous decision making styles are influenced by another set of personality measures, Ralph, called the MMPI, Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. We talked about that 2 weeks ago, and it measures various kinds of psychological traits. There are 10 different scales, but they're a little bit more what I'd call clinical or pathological than the big five. But I think that they also will give us an idea as to how various kinds of decisions are made. Like the first three scales on the MMPI are referred to as the neurotic triad. And that's got depression is in there, and anxiety is in there. Now, some people who are very, very depressed have a great deal of difficulty making any decisions. And people who are anxious might make decisions, but they're continually anxious about whether or not they made the right or the wrong decision.
yeah. And you might almost say they're at the point of being paranoid. Like, I know I've got to make a decision, but I'm absolutely terrified I'm going to make the wrong decision.
It's referred to as decision paralysis.
Yeah,
Yeah. Now, the next scale on the MMPI is the psychopathic deviant scale, PD. Now, the characteristic here is that the individual is impulsive, immature, and might make very emotional decisions. And hey, there's that fridge again, Ralph. Here's the Crosley, the $900 one that I can afford, but I really like all the bells and whistles on this one. I'm just going to get it.
yeah,
Okay. Hey, charge me 15% interest. It's okay. I can handle it.
yeah.
I can
And
service the debt.
the thing about that kind of decision, Jim, is that um, the psychopathic deviant scale suggests that I'm going to make a decision that values me.
Right. Yeah.
So it would be better for my family if I made the $900 decision, but it would be better for me if I got all the bells and whistles.
Yeah. People can see the fact that I've got the bells and the whistles. Maybe we could take this into another sphere. Maybe you could buy a low-end Ford pickup truck, or you could buy the monster truck of the 2024.
Yeah, 3/4 ton 4-wheel drive,
Costs as much as your house.
yeah,
Yeah, that kind of thing. So, you have to wonder about some of the people who are driving those monsters, how they would fit in the MMPI. But you mentioned paranoid, and that's another dimension on the MMPI, paranoia. And with paranoia, what do we have? We got a person who is suspicious of the options that they have, right?
yeah,
Like, if I buy this, the electric vehicle, for example, what's going to happen to it in 10 years when the battery runs out? Well, that could be rational, but it just could be a fear because we don't know what's going to happen in 10
yeah.
years.
Or I have an electric vehicle and I really like it and it operates well and I've had it for 3 years and I want a new one. How much can I sell
The old one for.
the old one for?
Yeah.
Like I know what happens if I buy a standard gasoline vehicle. At the end of 3 years, it's worth about 46% of what I paid for it.
Yeah, but will the electric vehicle be worth that much, or will it be worth more, or will it be worth less?
Yeah,
That's-
and the paranoid will say, I think it's going to be worth less.
Yeah, Um, so that, and in fact, we don't know what it's going to be worth because we don't have that data. But that would be the way that the person who is paranoid would probably approach it. There's another aspect to the MMPI, and that's the obsessive compulsive scale. Normally, what we see with people who are high on that scale, it's the 7 scale, is that they tend to be perfectionistic. They tend to be in their head a lot, and they have difficulty making any kind of decision for fear of making the wrong decision. So perfectionism is getting in its way, in the way of decision making, in a couple of different areas. If you're real anxious, it gets in the way. If you're very obsessed with making the quotes right decision, making the right decision is a good thing, but sometimes you don't know what the right decision is, right?
Yeah.
Like your example with the electric vehicle. So you make the decision to buy it, and then you stew for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years as to whether or not you're going to be able to sell it at some sort of a scalable price, right?
Right. And the thing is, I guess, that the obsessive person sometimes has uh, also real difficulty in making. Uh, we sometimes say, I pulled the trigger on this. I took the action. Uh, so what the obsessive person may end up saying is, I just can't.
Right. And hey, you need a car, you need a vehicle, but I can't make up my mind. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another characteristic on the MMPI is the schizophrenic scale. Well, people who, I'm not saying that schizophrenics necessarily make bad decisions, but they might make decisions that are, how should we say, atypical.
Okay.
Cutting off your ear is not a typical kind of decision, but probably Van Gogh did that in a state of altered reality.
Yeah. And, the thing with schizophrenics, when we say atypical decisions, uh, that's a polite way of saying they make a lot of strange decisions.
Right. Yeah.
Strange in terms of most of our apprehension of what they have done.
Mm-hmm. And another one that kind of goes along with the 4 scale, the psychopathic deviant scale, is the 9 scale, which is a measure of a lot of energy. And that's the person who is kind of outgoing, impulsive, and wants to make the decision now, today. They don't want to reflect. They don't want to get into decision paralysis. They just want the big truck, or they want the $1,700 fridge, and let's just get it over with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that can get in the way of sound decision making, particularly if your family can afford the $900 fridge and you go out and spend twice as much money on the fridge that you want. It's just because you want it and you want it now.
Yeah. And of course, the people who tend to do that kind of thing don't understand why, when they come home and say to their partner, I bought the big fridge, that they get hell in boxcar letters because we can't afford that.
The big fridge is empty.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Okay. So, in terms of personality, one's personality, whether you're looking at the Big Five or you're looking at the MMPI, does affect your everyday life. And in this case, we're talking about decision making, but it could affect relationships and how you negotiate them. It could affect career choices, could affect educational choices. If you're a 25-year-old right now, and you're looking at your diploma, which is graduation with honors in English literature. Okay, you might just look at that and say, okay, I can get, as the joke is, right?
I can Get a job at McDonald's anytime.
Yeah. Or, I'm 25 years old. I can invest another 2 years and get maybe a master's in, let's see, what could it be in? I want to help people. I want to, maybe behavioral counseling. Maybe I could become a behavior therapist, an applied behavior analyst. Well, an applied behavior analyst, even if they go back and get another bachelor's degree, which they could probably do pretty easily, is starting to make about 75,000 right out of the gate, whereas the person with the bachelor's in English might not be making that much money ever, right?
Ever, yeah.
So you might have to make hard decisions, and taking the rational approach is certainly one way to do it.
Yeah, and for example, right now, you're 17 and a half years old. You're almost coming up to the end of your high school program. You sit down and look at what you want to do with your life, and you say, okay, I can go to university. I've applied for several schools. It's wonderful. I've gotten accepted at Columbia. But I have to pay $65,000 a semester to go to Columbia. Or I can go to trade school and take 2 years and discover how to become a apprentice electrician.
Okay. Or you could, suppose you didn't want to do that. You're more of a free-spirited, kind of artistic person, and you could think, well, I'm going to feed my free spirit in New York at Columbia. Well, at 65,000, you're not going to feed it very much, I think. But you could go to that trade school and learn how to do welding, and you could become a fantastic decorative welder. I've seen that one happening.
Yeah. So, trades do not necessarily limit the artistic and creative.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things then that you have to do, and it's unfortunate because a lot of us through experience in life end up making better decisions at 40 than we did at 18.
But when you're faced with something at 18, you got to do it, right?
You've got to do it.
Yeah. And we don't take a lot of advice from the 40-year-old at that point, i.e. our parents.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned, you've talked in the past about trade schools, and certainly we know that people who have a trade, who know how to do something, will make a lot of money. They can be financially comfortable. But Sheila and I just had our kitchen done in the house that we have purchased. And it's a fantastic kitchen. It's beautiful and it's very artistic. And the carpenters that did it have a lot of pride in their construction ability. So I think you're right. You can feel fulfilled, from a creative standpoint in a lot of different ways. And maybe at the end of the day, serving at McDonald's, you'll feel creative too and fulfilled. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, but what I do know is that we have to factor in the personality that each of us is given or grows up with, and also, to some extent, the emotional intelligence that we have, which might be a topic for another podcast.
Okay. With that, this is Jim.
And Ralph.
Saying keep your stick on the ice.
Because we're all in this
together.